Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the PPR podcast. I'll call it 9 different names before the end of this season. So, Pigskin, Pick'em, and I can never remember if it's Roundup or Rundown, so I'm just going to call it the PPR podcast. And this evening, we're heading into week 13. Lucky number 13. Just got out of week 12 and returning to the podcast. My good buddy, my good podcast pal, Patrick Mullin. Pat, are you ready to talk some football tonight?
Jesse, I've been waiting for you to ask me that for a long time.
This is a week to bring you on here, that's for sure, because a lot of things happened on the in the Pick'em there this weekend, and I know. Yeah, they did, Pat. As humble as you may try to seem. I know differently, sir. I know differently. We're going to talk about that here in a few. But, we're coming out of week 12, going into week 13. And I brought my subject tonight will probably be, we'll look at the division leaders and maybe kind of get an idea of their of who's got probably the best bet on making the playoffs. With mostly, if you're in the lead of your division about this time of the year, you've got a pretty good chance. But boy, the way the NFL's been shaping up here lately, I don't know. You could be knocked out of that top position pretty quickly. Pat, did you bring anything else? Did you bring anything else to the table tonight?
As a matter of fact, I did.
Oh, okay. All right. What are we going to talk about?
In the current era and climate of the NFL, we understand that defense is secondary. We're a long way removed from the days of the 85 Bears or the Orange Crush Broncos, Purple People Eater Vikings, Steel Curtains, where the defenses were really the heart and soul of the teams and the reasons they were successful.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think we have to give a lot of credit to there are 2 teams to me that have been playing just outstanding defense and winning games. They shouldn't, because of the level of play of their defense, keeping them relevant. And there are 2 teams with largely strong defensive histories. I referenced the Orange Crush of the Denver Broncos in the 80s. They've been playing some outstanding defense over the course of the last few weeks, and their defense came up big against a very good Steelers offense to close out an upset win for them last week.
Yeah, I was actually watching that game at least up to when they were tied, I think, 17-17. Didn't it come down to like a very similar situation like it was the previous week where Big Ben had the opportunity to try and put this game away?
He did, and he threw a pick directly into the hands of a linebacker in the end zone on a really heads-up good defensive play.
Nice.
And there's an interesting subplot to the Broncos in that last year on the road, do you know what the Broncos' record was?
What's that?
1-7.
On the road? I know it's tough to play on the road, but 1-7, you got to bring something home sometimes.
Now, they're already better than that this year by virtue of having road wins over the lowly Cardinals and a surprise road win over the very strong Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah, the Broncos, man, I agree. They're turning things around.
Well, and probably to the surprise of none, I think we have to look at the Chicago Bears.
Oh, yeah.
You look at this team and what they're able to do on defense, not just in terms of limiting what opposing offenses can do against them, but they have a strong scoring defense.
Yeah,
they not only create turnovers, they finish turnovers.
29 takeaways. 29 takeaways, leading the takeaways for the league over second place Cleveland Browns.
You look at what they've been able to do on defense. You look at a guy like Eddie Jackson. The things he's been able to do. Eddie Jackson, who was drafted last year, was his rookie year. Okay, fourth round pick. The 13th safety drafted. He's already got 6 career return touchdowns between this season and last season from interceptions.
Wow.
That is a playmaker on a defense full of playmakers.
Yeah, clearly their acquisition of Khalil Mack, that was all I heard about. We talked about it on this podcast about how much he had helped that defense. And
now you look at on Thanksgiving, the Bears played without their quarterback, Mitchell Trubisky.
Yep.
Okay. That is a significant lost to them because Trubisky is a great young quarterback who's been really leading that offense very capably. He has a good run game support, but he's made some plays from his position to guys like Taylor Gabriel, their tight end Trey Burton. He's made plays and made that offense really step up their game. Rather than being a game manager, he's a playmaker quarterback now. They didn't have him on Thanksgiving. They still came through and won. They won how? Scoring defense.
Mm-hmm.
You got a big play from who? Eddie Jackson, who had a big pick six off of Matthew Stafford, took that into the end zone. You go back a couple of weeks prior when they played the Buffalo Bills. 2 first-half turnovers, both turned into touchdowns by the defense. This is not anything new for the Bears. They've been scoring on the defensive side of the ball in addition to the offensive side of the ball. It's one of those things where maybe statistically they won't rank higher in total defense, but at the same time, when your defense is not only putting points on the board but keeping your offense relevant, it's a huge factor as to why this team is doing as well as they are. And I think it says a lot that in the current league climate, when you have a defense that's still that capable, I really like what I see out of that.
If they keep this up, they've got there's a couple high scoring teams in the NFC that they could end up facing in the playoffs, one being the New Orleans Saints, and the other one being the Los Angeles Rams. So they're going to have to buckle down when playoffs roll around to try and stifle some scoring.
You want a staggering statistic from them? The turnover ratio, plus 14.
Wow.
You look at some of these splits, okay, now on offense, their average plays, that net average yards, they're averaging 5.6 yards per play. Not a ton on paper. However, you consider again that they've been without their starting quarterback in their last game. They really only started turning up the offensive dial about 4 weeks ago. And if you go back 4 weeks, that average yardage per play was 4.9.
Oh, dang.
So they've leapt about almost a yard a play in a short amount of time. So their opponents average less than 5 yards per play. They also have 38 touchdowns to an opposing 25 touchdowns given up. And again, we talk about defense, just to put it in perspective. Interception statistics. Kyle Fuller has 5. Eddie Jackson has 4. Prince Amukamara, Adrian Amos, and Bryce Callahan all have 2. Khalil Mack, Aaron Lynch, Leonard Floyd, Danny Trevathan, Sherrick McManus all have 1. That is a total of 20 INTs as a team, not even through the full season. Most guys on a team on a defense that are a playoff-bound team, a championship-bound team, they may have 5, 6 that lead the team. Their top 2 guys already have 5 and 4 respectively, with, of those 20 INTs, 5 have gone back to the house for 6.
No kidding.
1 out of every 4 they catch is returned for a touchdown.
Wow. So when they're making the plays, they're just like you said, they're turning it into points, which is going to be a big factor. I mean, nothing will take the wind out of the sails of a team when they're on offense and immediately the defense takes the ball away and scores with it. And now you're down 7 and your offense is right back out there trying to do something just to try and catch up. It's tough to do and tough to overcome. The pick six is, man, when your defense steps up and takes over like that, that's making a statement, number one. And number two, it's an easy way of getting control of the game. Let's just look real quick and run down some of the team stats for this year. Baltimore Ravens have apparently been doing really well. They're, I believe this is sorted by yards.
Outstanding passing defense.
Yeah. Looking at points for, which I would assume is points against, in other words. The teams have not scored more than 200 against the Baltimore Ravens total this year. Then followed up by the Chicago Bears with 211. Dallas Cowboys have third spot with 213 points against. 213 points. And then the Los Angeles Chargers, which usually I equate them with an explosive offense. Their defense is stepping up this year. And then number 5 is the Houston Texans. So, that top 5 of those defense, every single one of those, I believe, we're looking at division leaders here. Chicago Bears, the Ravens, I'm pretty sure.
With the exception of the Chargers, who are behind the Chiefs.
They're okay. All right. And are the Cowboys like tied, or are they at the top?
I believe it is still 8. I believe their latest win tied them.
I'm looking. Yeah, you're right.
That division's a dumpster fire anyway.
6-5 and 6-5. Yeah, we'll talk about that. But yeah, Cowboys are top of the division. Chicago is top of the division. Chargers, like you said, behind the Kansas City Chiefs. Houston Texans are the top of their division. So yeah, man, you're right. The defense is where it's at. With a good defense, you've got a good opportunity of at least taking the top of the division. And if you have a good offense to kind of support that, then you're playoff bound most likely. So, all right. Well, good discussion. Anything else you'd like to add to that?
No, let's move on.
All right, man. So, yeah, like I said, I want to kind of look at our division leaders, and we'll look at what we have in store for them to see the likelihood of them let's just say we'll figure out who's got the best chance of getting to the playoffs, who might have the hardest struggle also. Let's start with the AFC East, probably one of the easier divisions, at least in the past. Things have gotten a little bit more difficult for the New England Patriots, who are 8-3, leading the AFC East. They're above the Miami Dolphins by 3 games. Miami's 5-6 right now. Looking at the New England Patriots, what do you think here, man? I mean, pretty much a shoe-in to at least make the wild card.
They're going to win the division. That division is just still a very weak division. You know, while the Patriots may have lost some of their steam from prior years, they haven't lost enough to lose out in that division to the Jets, Bills, or Dolphins at this point. It's coming closer. If you look at their remaining schedule, of their 5 remaining games, 3 of them are divisional matchups.
Yep.
All of which are winnable games. 2 of them are at home, 1 on the road again in Miami. They have the Vikings at home this week, and they will be on the road in Pittsburgh in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I would say outside of their division is going to be their toughest games. You know, the Vikings definitely will probably be the toughest game out of these 5. Pittsburgh at home it's not going to be a cakewalk. And I know the Steelers have bad memories of Tom Brady in the playoffs quite a few times. So I'm sure they're looking to play spoiler if they can. But you're right, man. I think it's probably going to be a cakewalk. They're not going to have much trouble. They just played the New York Jets. They beat them 27-13. And that's the final game of the season for them. The Buffalo Bills, again, I can't predict what they're going to do from one week to the next. Usually they're, I'm going to bet against them heavily and against it wasn't the Buffalo Bills. It was the Detroit Lions that beat the Patriots there earlier this season.
If you recall the game that they played earlier this year in Buffalo, it was a competitive game on Monday night through the first half, but the offense just couldn't support the defense of the Bills and stay on the field. They wore down, and eventually Brady broke through, and New England wound up winning by 19.
Yeah, okay, so we're pretty confident we're going to see the Patriots yet again in the playoffs. Let's take a look at the AFC South. All right, so currently leading the AFC South is the Houston Texans, which I wouldn't be ashamed to say I kind of wrote them off earlier this year, and then they started to kind of shine, and they've definitely been more of a formidable team to go up against. I think we have them next week. Let me look here.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, so Cleveland is going to play them at home. So we're going to Houston. So let's take looking at their schedule. So they're 8-3. They've got the Colts, who are not slowing down. They started off slow, but they're definitely kind of trying to pick the pace back up here and may make a run for the head of this division. Only 2 games back. What do you think about the Houston Texans, man?
You know, you talked about the Houston Texans starting to really streak. The Colts really starting to streak. I think the problem is they've hit their stride too late to catch up with the Texans. They have 1 game left head-to-head with each other in Houston that I think could go either way. However, looking at their respective schedules of who's left, I would say that the Texans have a more favorable schedule. The Texans play your Brownies this weekend at home. They play the Colts at home. Their road games are against the lowly New York Jets, a very uneven Philadelphia Eagles, and they finish the season at home against the Jaguars. The Colts are going to be on the road for 1, to 3 of their 5 remaining games against the Jaguars, the aforementioned Texans, and their other division rival, the Tennessee Titans. So 3 divisional games on the road. Their 2 home games are against the Cowboys, which could go either way, and the New York Giants, who have the potential to do well but tend to fall short. I like them to have very similar runs to the end of the season, but I just think that the Texans being in better position right now is going to allow them to play it safe a little bit and win out the division.
All right, let's move on here. Let's take a look at what's next on this list here. Oh, my goodness, the AFC North. The AFC North, Pittsburgh Steelers leading the division 7-3-1. Here, the Ravens only one. I don't know how Ty factors into this. You might know better. Are they considered one game behind?
It is going to be one game behind technically, but the tie equals mess, so we'll just start there.
Yeah, I wouldn't have any idea how to do that math. So, all right, let's look at their schedule here. We got 5 games left. They're hosting the Chargers this week. Oh, boy. That could be potentially a loss. They go on the road against the Raiders.
Gee, I wonder how that's going to turn out.
Then we have the New England Patriots going into Pittsburgh. We already talked about that. Oh, my goodness. And then they go on the road at the Saints.
Gee, I wonder how that's going to turn out.
That is, yeah. And then they're going to be hosting the Cincinnati Bengals. And that the Bengals coming off a heartbreaking loss at home against my Brownies. I'm still smiling. But, I mean, they've got a pretty tough schedule here. 3 of those 2 games are not chip shots. I mean,
I tell you what, I only like them in 2 of those games.
That Bengals and the Raiders?
Yeah, I don't like them against the Chargers, and I know that they're favored against the Chargers because they've been a better home team. I think the Chargers are primed to beat them this week. I don't like them against New England just because they never play New England well, be it at home or on the road, and I definitely do not like them in the Superdome against the Saints.
So they would finish out 9-6-1. Is that right? Yeah, 9-6-1.
Is it 9-6? Yeah, 9-6-1. They would finish if that went that way.
So let's just real quick. Let's look at the Ravens and see if they even have a chance.
And here's where it gets muddy.
Okay.
Now you look at the Ravens schedule. On the road against the Falcons, on the road against the Chiefs, home against the Bucks, on the road against the Chargers, home against the Ravens. Home against the Browns. Yes.
The old Ravens.
Yeah. Now, I like them over the Falcons. I like them over the Bucks, and I like them over the Browns.
Yeah.
I don't like them against the Chiefs. And that Charger game to me, because it's in L.A., I like the Chargers. Yeah. So I think they're going 3-2.
And then we're looking at 9-7.
Yeah.
Yep.
So now, unfortunately, though, I believe at 9-7 versus 9-6-1, the Steelers would still win the division.
Would they look at game? Well, they split the series this year. Yeah. Pittsburgh won one, and then the Ravens won the other.
But even with the divisional record playing out, let's say Baltimore does wind up with a superior divisional record, I don't believe it's a factor because the Pittsburgh Steelers would still have the better overall record.
Because they didn't lose. Oh, boy. Interesting. That's what a tie does to things, I swear. So far, I think of all the divisions, this one right here is going to be the most interesting to see who comes out on top at the end of the year.
And I would agree with that.
Yeah. All right, let's look at AFC West. Yeah. All right. So right now, the Kansas City Chiefs leading 9-2, one game ahead of the Los Angeles Chargers, 8-3. Let's take a look at the rest of the schedule for the Kansas City Chiefs. So they're they got Oakland twice in these next 5.
Yeah.
So, all right. So then we have like we were talking about, they have the Ravens. They play the Chargers in there, and they're at Seattle. Seattle, what do you think of Seattle? Have they been strong enough to where they could probably pull off a win at home against the Chiefs?
You know, they're not the Legion of Boom like they once were. The Richard Sherman and Earl Thomas defensive stalwarts with the 13th man. They're not the same home team. They're going to beat most teams at home. But the Chiefs have proven themselves to be an elite level team on that top tier with the Saints, with the Rams. I don't think that Seattle has enough in them to beat them. They would really, to me, have to resort to a lot of gimmickry to get there. and I just don't think they're at that level.
Yeah.
I like the Chiefs in that game in Seattle, especially knowing that potentially home fields for the duration of the playoffs would be on the line in that game.
So what do we say here? Oakland Raiders, that's a win. Ravens, they're hosting the Ravens. Did we say that was going to be did we say that's going to be a win?
That to me is the most difficult game on their schedule based on how they match up, be it with Lamar Jackson or Joe Flacco. I think both provide them with problems for different reasons. Mm-hmm. And if there is a chink in the Chiefs' armor, sorry if I'm not allowed to say that in 2018. It is that they have a very suspect defensive game, especially late. The Ravens, again, it's very difficult to score on them. I think the Chiefs can do it. Can they stop the Ravens enough to where it won't matter? Yeah, I think they can. So I think they win here.
Okay.
I think the Charger game is one that's going to be a tough one that they still grind out. And I think they wind up finishing and winning out the season.
Yeah, wow, 14-2 then. All right. Well, then the Chargers would have to obviously win out the season as well to try and give them a challenge. They're 8-3 right now. They're going on the road at Pittsburgh. They're hosting the Bengals, on the road at Kansas City, Baltimore hosting the Baltimore Ravens, and at Denver. And I can tell you that I don't see them winning those five. They're not going to win out those 5 games.
Well, again, I just don't think they're in position right now where they can beat the Chiefs heads up. It's one of those things where I think week 1 they caught them off guard a little bit, and the Chiefs were still figuring out their identity with Mahomes as their quarterback. Statistically, the Chargers over the past 4 seasons have played their worst games against the Chiefs.
Yeah,
I think that first game this year was a little bit of an aberration. I think the second game you'll see what we've seen the past 4 years play out a little bit more, especially what we saw last year's playoff game between the two. And aside from that, I do like them in each of these games. I think the most difficult game besides that one is going to Mile High against Denver, especially after losing to Denver at home.
Yeah. Squeaker, it looks like 23-22. Man.
Yeah, on a missed extra point.
Kicker woes. It used to be in the past, I wrote the Chargers off. Anytime they went east and played like a 1:00 game, I would usually write them off. Now they're only heading east to play Pittsburgh, but that's at 8:20, so that's a Sunday night game. If they have a chance of beating the Steelers at home, that's a good time to be playing them, is in the evening on Sunday. But regardless, I think you're right. I mean, we're going to look at a Chiefs domination here in these last 5 games, and they're going to walk away with the division title. All right. Let's get in the NFC here. NFC, we'll start with the NFC least, as I've heard it's called, or the dumpster fire. Dallas Cowboys 6-5, Washington Redskins 5-6, Philadelphia Eagles 1 game behind those top 2, 5-6. The New York Giants probably out of it. Hell, you never know. There's only 3 games back. If everybody else can lose, you never know. But let's focus on the Dallas Cowboys.
Why can't the Raiders play in the NFC?
The Dallas Cowboys. All right, so here's the rest of their schedule. I think we've kind of mentioned them already. So they're playing the New Orleans Saints. They're hosting the New Orleans Saints. They're hosting they're hosting the Philadelphia Eagles. They're at Indianapolis. They are hosting the Buccaneers, and they're at the Giants. Boy, sending that season out on a rivalry game there, Giants-Cowboys. So we're definitely saying hosting the New Orleans Saints, but most likely not walking out of there with a win. Would you agree?
100%. I put 16 points on that already and pick them.
Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles.
I still like Dallas in that game, especially at home.
Okay. On the road at Indianapolis.
That is a tougher one to call, barring any unforeseen injuries to either team. I like Indy in a very tight game.
Okay. Then we have them hosting the Bucks.
Who's going to be the quarterback that week? Jameis Winston or Ryan Fitzpatrick?
Maybe somebody else will just show their face and they go, oh, you'll be the quarterback. And you'll be the quarterback. And you'll be the quarterback.
Maybe we can get like Brad Johnson back or somebody. Stradkowski.
Yeah, I'd say consistency-wise, I would feel like I would want to go Cowboys here.
I agree. And also, just as a side note, the number 2 and number 3 leading quarterbacks in turnovers are, in fact, Jameis Winston and Ryan Fitzpatrick.
What a stat. And then they're on the road, the Cowboys on the road at the Giants. Do you think the Giants down their rival at home and send Eli off into that good night? Or how are things going to happen there?
I think Dallas is going to be in a position where they still have to win that game, and they will do everything they can to win it.
Okay. All right. So 9-7 is what we kind of have them going out on. And just like you said, they're tied right now with the Eagles, right? Did I say that? No,
it's
Redskins.
Washington Redskins.
I would say Dallas Cowboys are pretty comfortable, even though that division is tight. I think Dallas has the advantage when it comes to the passion. Like I said, they got that chip on their shoulder. So we'll see how that rolls out. Wow. NFC South. I mean, I don't even know if we have to have this discussion. New Orleans Saints. New Orleans Saints 10-1. Carolina Panthers 6-5 in second place. I mean, where this is a shoe-in, I'm not even going to look at the schedule. But
no reason to.
Yeah, New Orleans Saints walking away with the South.
I was going to say maybe the only reason we look at this is to see if we think New Orleans gets home field.
Okay.
So let's pull it up just for the heck of it and see what's left on the agenda.
I'll run it down.
Saints.
Okay, run it down for the New Orleans Saints. They're at Dallas. We just talked about that, so we're pretty certain that's going to be a win. They're at Tampa Bay. I'm pretty certain that's going to be a win. They're at Carolina. They're playing Carolina 1 week, and then they play the Steelers, and then they play Carolina again. Are they going to sit players, you think, that early, 3 weeks to go? Or
Yeah, I think there's one other team they're worried about, and it's over home field, so it's not a team they're seeing again. But I don't think they're sitting players that early.
Okay.
However, depending on how that game goes, we could see them sit players against the Steelers at the Superdome or the Panthers. Well, we're almost guaranteed to see them sit against the Panthers final week of the season.
Yeah. You know, I think when we looked at the AFC North, we wrote Pittsburgh off against the Saints. If the Saints start sitting players that early in that game, then Pittsburgh might walk away with a win and secure their division pretty easily, because that was one of the losses I think we attributed to them. So
it was. That's one of those games where if they're going to play, I could see Breeze playing a quarter and then they peel him out and play. Who's backing up there? Is it Teddy Bridgewater?
Bridgewater is, and then they have a guy by the name of Taysom Hill.
Taysom Hill, love Taysom Hill.
Okay.
I think Bridgewater would likely play in the quarterback role, and they may use Hill still in that kind of just Swiss Army knife role where he can play quarterback for a down, he could run it, he could play tight end. But even then, Bridgewater comes into that game. It's not as though Bridgewater is not a capable starter.
That's right.
With still a lot of weapons at his disposal besides Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara. I mean, I still like the Saints in that game, even if they sit Breeze.
That ties kind of back into our pick'em, because in these last 2 weeks, if anybody's going to start sitting players, any teams that are doing really well start to do that, especially in that last week, that really messes with the weights. Because, Saints over Carolina, that's a shoe-in. Well, not in the last week, because if Carolina's not doing the greatest, but I say that, I mean, they've won, they're sitting at 6. They got a winning record. If I knew Drew Brees is not going to play and most of the starters are probably going to sit after the first quarter, then I'm going to start putting money on or points on Carolina. And
it's still not a gimme though, because again, Carolina's level of play has been so beneath what it should be versus even a second level of the Saints.
Yeah.
It's weird how good that team is even without their best guys on the field. You take away Drew Brees, you take away Michael Thomas, you take away Alvin Kamara, take away Ben Watson, right? We'll say those are the regulars in those roles.
Yeah. Okay,
you're still going to see who? Ted Ginn. You're still going to see Cameron Meredith. You're still going to see Taysom Hill. You're still going to see Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah.
That's still a fully capable, functional starting offense. Mark Ingram would be your starting back instead of Kamara.
Yeah, man, it'll be interesting when we get to the end of that week. But we're looking at most likely 14, 15. We'll just say at the worst, a 14-2, or They went it out, and that's 15-1. Now we're going to look at. Let's flip it on over so we can do a little comparison and look at the Los Angeles Rams over there in the NFC West. Almost a very similar situation where second place currently sitting Seattle Seahawks are 6-5, Los Angeles Rams 10-1. So here's the rest of these games.
Ooh.
Yeah, man, there's some tough ones. Say tough ones.
There's a main event matchup in there.
Yes, there is, and that's Sunday night game. That'll be a good game. They're at Detroit, and Detroit's shocked the world before, I think, this year. I don't know if they're going to do it again, though. This is, if you look at the Patriots and you compare them to the Rams, I'm sorry. To me, they're two completely different teams. Division leaders, both of them, but I can tell you right now, I'm taking the Rams over the Patriots all day, every day. Then we have them going, this is the main event I'm sure you're talking about. They're at Chicago, and we were just talking about this is a Chicago team that is defensively strong, going up against one of the most potent offenses in the NFC right now, aside from the last team we just talked about, the New Orleans Saints. So what do you think? They're at Chicago. They're on the road. Do you think Chicago has a chance of handing them the L?
Well, I think as long as Chicago does the right thing for themselves long term this weekend against the Giants, which is sit Mitchell Trubisky to get him back to 100%, I actually like the Bears in that game at home.
They are going to be hosting the Philadelphia Eagles. Do you think that's pretty cut and dry?
Especially after a loss, yeah, I think they'll be hungry. I think it's one of those, we need to step it up after we lost, the same way we saw them do after the Saints game. And again, to be fair with the Saints game, they also didn't have their top player in the secondary with them, Aqib Talib. So that was, one thing that people have to take into account with that game as it was played. But I think they'll really turn the volume up against the Rams after a somewhat of an upset against the Bears, depending on how you look at it.
So Arizona, San Francisco. I mean, are you going to try and make an argument for either one of those at all?
No, but I would like to clarify for the record, Nick Mullins and I are not related. First of all, my name is Mullin. His name is Mullins, plural. He also spells it with an E, whereas I spell it with an I. We are not related.
Has there been a lot of confusion on your end or something? Have people been coming to you and say, hey, wait a second?
People, when they found out he was starting against the Raiders, were like, it's going to be a tough one for you to decide then. You can't go against the team, but you can't go against your family, pal? And I was like, what are you talking about?
Nice. So at most, they're going to lose maybe one more, and they're finishing the season out at 14-2. 14-2. So did we hand the Saints a loss in that last one? We did, didn't we? So we're going to end up with a tie between these two.
And then it would go to the divisional record, whoever has the superior divisional record. And looking at the Rams right now through this year, 1-0 division, 2-0 division, 3-0 division, 4-0 division. They are likely to go 6-0 in their division. So that would propel them into home field status if that were the case.
Huh.
Actually, wait, but you know what? The Saints have one loss this season. Who did they lose to? Let's check that real quick. I have it up in front of me. The Saints' loss this year was to the Bucs, so it would be a 5-1 division record.
I've got to see this just to believe it.
Week 1, 48-40. That was the launch of the Fitzmagic.
Magikowski. Yeah, Magikowski. That's throwing it back.
Wow, if they could go back in time and just lose to anybody else, they would want to, not to the Bucs, because
that's what's going to do it.
Loss will hurt them in that 14-2 if they end up with that equal footing to the Rams.
Damn. All right, so last one, NFC North, led by the Chicago Bears, Minnesota Vikings 6-4-1. We've kind of talked about this a little bit already. Let's take a look at the schedule. Chicago Bears next 5 games going to be they're at the New York Giants. They're hosting the Rams. They're hosting the Packers. They're at San Francisco, and they're at Minnesota. Green Bay, unfortunately, is backsliding so much that I cannot even consider them to give Chicago a game at Chicago. I don't think that's going to happen.
I mean, they're just such a bad road team.
Yeah.
0-12 in their last 12 road appearances. 1-13 in their last 14 road appearances.
Not good. Not good at all. So, New York Giants, I'm going to say you're most likely going to consider that a win. Los Angeles Rams, what'd we say there? The Rams are going to lose.
I like the Bears in that one.
Yeah. Green Bay Packers, we're going to say that the Chicago Bears will take them down. San Francisco, do you have any qualms there?
I would be shocked if San Francisco puts points up.
Okay. And then we have at Minnesota.
Well, now, all things considered, if let's say the Charger, or let's say that the Saints and the Rams both finish 14-2, Chicago really doesn't have anything to play for at that point because the best their record is going to get this year is 13-3. So even then, they'd still be giving away home field advantage to two different divisional winners in New Orleans and the Rams. So at that point, it would probably behoove them to sit their starters against the Vikings, provided they win as they should and the Vikings don't go on a run.
Yeah, that probably factors into it. Yeah, I mean, if you're seeing a Vikings team that's coming on strong, you got to really think of what's going to happen or what you're going to do in that last game.
Now let's look at the Vikings record, or let's look at the Vikings schedule to check on that.
Well, we have them going to New England. That's not an easy game.
Not
at Seattle, and I don't think that's easy. I think going on the road all the way to the West Coast, playing against Seattle Seahawks, who,
we talked about the Chiefs going there. This ain't the Chiefs.
That's right. This is the Vikings. Then they're hosting the Miami Dolphins again. I'm probably putting one on that game because you know how I feel about the Miami Dolphins. I hate them. I cannot even try to figure out what's going to happen with the Miami Dolphins week to week.
Now back with Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah. At Detroit after that, and then like we said, we got Chicago. I mean, they may put on a decent run, but I think at the time, the Chicago Bears are going to have this division well in hand come that last game, in my opinion. I don't think the Vikings are going to give them anything to worry about, unless they pull up some crazy upset against New England, which could happen. Could very well happen. That's the only thing I could think of that would give them anything to worry about. So really, it probably depends on this next game and how they play.
I think it's the next two games for each team for me.
Mm-hmm.
The Bears again away without Trubisky. And say what you want about the Giants, they collapsed last week against the Eagles like a house of cards.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still, you have to respect the playmaking ability of a Saquon Barkley. You have to understand that you're playing against one of the best quarterbacks of his era in Eli Manning, and your offense is not at 100% against a hungry defense at home. I still like the Bears to win, but if they lose there, then there's certainly the possibility they could lose to the Rams.
Oh, yeah.
And if they lose those two games, while Minnesota is playing a Patriots team that they could potentially beat, and a Seahawks team that they could potentially beat, that flips everything on its ear, and those final three games for each team matter.
And guess what we have in there as well? We have the tie. We have the tie that where the Vikings tied the Packers in week 2. So the thing is that that final game, Minnesota versus Chicago, is going to that game may come down to who walks away with the division. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
I mean, wow.
Do we still like the Bears? Yeah, I do. I wouldn't say that if I wasn't going to pick them over the Rams. So you got to believe I'm pretty confident in that Bears team.
Yeah.
That being said, again, you look at the possibility of this scenario, it's not that crazy.
Could be an interesting end to that division as well. So I'd say the ones we're probably going to be paying attention to the most, the AFC North, that one's going, both of them have the ties. The AFC North has the tie with that Pittsburgh has in their record, and the Vikings with their tie also may factor into the final. So we'll see how this division shapes up, I think, early. So we'll see how it all goes down. So
I'm on the record, barring injury, you heard it here first, Chicago Bears, Super Bowl.
Oh my goodness, we could be looking at the Super Bowl shuffle in a new iteration. Hell, you never know. When was the last time the Bears made it there?
The 2005 season, they played the.
Right.
No, I'm sorry. 2006 season, they played the Colts.
Who was it that? Oh my gosh, I'm trying to remember who the quarterback was for that team.
Rex Grossman.
Yes, Rex Grossman. On the record, Pat Mullin. Let me tell you, as we get into talking about the results of this week, you come on this podcast and you talk to me through Messenger, and you say things like I'm on record as the Chicago Bears going to the Super Bowl. Well, ladies and gentlemen, don't take that lightly, because Pat Mullin has come on here and he's told me I'm going to walk away this year as the person with the best record of the pick percentage, I guess we'd say, best pick percentage, and he says he's going to walk away with first place. Well, here we are, week 13. I'm not really going to build it up because I'm kind of spoiling it here. You're tied for first place. So first off, congratulations. We're going to kind of run them down bottom to top. But I do want to say, when he says it's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen, you might want to listen up, because so far it's been a happening. So are you ready, man? We'll do the rundown.
Let's run it down.
Let's run it down. Here we go. Going from bottom to top for the week. Only one person scored in the 70s, and that was just barely, as Raider Nation has one of their worst weeks to date, coming in 14th with 70 points, losing huge points on Tennessee on Monday night, and could have possibly been hoping for an upset there to salvage the week. Sitting in the 80s with 83 points and 13th spot, struggling to turn his season around, is Dwayne Williams.
What would Artie Lang say, Dwayne? He'd probably still be amazed that you are a white person named Dwayne.
White Dwayne, who losing the most points on the board, picking big time on Jacksonville.
Oh.
Yeah, that was a rough one.
I understand the hurt on that one, though, because, things could have turned out very differently had Leonard Fournette not gotten into the fisticuffs.
I know, man. That's why I think I had 5 on Jacksonville. Again, I was just looking at the defensive standings. I think Jacksonville, at least in one stat I was looking at, is up there. And that's kind of where I based most of my points. It's like, okay, Jacksonville's got a good defense. They can do this. But the offense is just continually sputtering and running into problems.
Blake Bortles is the worst quarterback in football.
Tripping over themselves. A whole score of people reached the 90 to 95 point threshold. From 12th to 9th sits Mamaw Cat with 91, Thug and Harmony at 94, and Wilvis and Steel Curtain tying for 9th, each with 95 points. Now, 7th to 5th showcases who scored from 96 to 100. Go Luck Yourself and the Bungles, formerly known as the Perfect Storm, who I found out earlier this week, he changed his name for 2 reasons. Obviously, the Bengals lost to the Browns at home, and all of a sudden they've got a rising distaste for Vontaze Burfict. So they are not a fan anymore. So they have changed their name to the Bungles. So these two tie for 7th with 98 points. Edging them by 1 point is myself, Stizzy Stompers, who lost 10 points, like I said earlier, picking the Steelers over the Broncos. So Win grabs 5th with 100, who didn't even pick a Thursday night game. Well, I shouldn't say Thursday night, but he didn't even pick. He missed the early game, whatever the early game was on Thursday. He missed that, but made up for the other 2. But again, I lost to him by a point, and he made up for it with a very strong week. So we have a 3-way tie for second place for the week. Last week's guest, Hobo Samurai. This week's guest, Totally 80s Pat, and NFL Super Pro, each with 101 points. What are we talking about here? What happened to you? Because I looked at it, and all of a sudden I'm seeing a big blank spot in the middle of the picks. So can you give me an idea did it just slip your mind, or what happened?
So in the continual conspiracy against me by Yahoo, because Yahoo doesn't want me to be a champion, but I still confound them anyway and rise above. Rather than go for the all-out sabotage on me like they did last year when they did not give me a week's worth of picks that I made.
Oh, man, that was rough.
And just basically took me out of the running late in the season, knowing they couldn't get away with that again, such an obvious tactic. What they did was they took one game away from me this week, that being the game between the Philadelphia Eagles and New York Giants, which I even had the points filled in at 3 points. Somehow did not give me the pick on the Eagles, which admittedly didn't look good for a while, but came through. Yahoo.
Yeah.
And thus, rather than sitting in second for the week with 104 points, I am forced to take a step backward and share the company of NFL Super Pro and Hobo Samurai Jason Teasley at 101 when it should be 104. And in addition to that, have 977 points to lead overall.
Oh, man, you're right.
And an additional win on my record to, again, lead that overall untied.
Wow. Yeah, dude, because you're tied for first, and that could have clearly put you over.
Now,
I'm
still technically in first because, again, the
That's right.
tiebreaker goes to the superior record holder, which is me.
Mm-hmm. Yahoo's making you work for this.
And then I forget who's tied me with the best overall picked percentage. It might be the Bungles. I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, you're right. The Bungles, 116.58. And wow, man, you're in first. He is in fifth.
So, but again, had that pick been rightly given to me, like it should have been, rather than Yahoo trying to pull the rug out from under me, I would thus be sitting alone with both the untied points total and pick percentage total.
Well, the way that you're rolling here these last few weeks, if you continue that trend, I don't think you're going to have much of a problem. But then again...
Not to take away from this week's overall winner, though.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, you guys each had 101, and I'll tell you, things would have looked different. If you listen to last week's episode, Jason Teasley gets on here and says he likes to overdo things. He says he's going to give me 2 upsets, one of which was the Cleveland Browns over the Cincinnati Bengals. Kudos for that one. He also had the Giants over Philadelphia. That was his other upset. And if they would have held the Eagles, there was a 4th down play as the Eagles were driving. The Giants, all they had to do was stop. All they had to do was stop the Eagles. And they can't do it. It results in a field goal on that final drive with seconds left on the clock, puts the Eagles over the Giants, and the Eagles walk away with the win. If that would have just flipped around, Teasley is easily sitting in first place this week. And that's just the thing. Don't
go Homer.
I think you've told him that a couple times. He doesn't listen. So, all right, yes, our first place for the second time this year. There's only been 2 people that have done that so far in 2018. That's this guy right here, Freebird, who only missed 3 games, scoring huge with a 9-pointer on his Cleveland Browns and being the only one that took Seattle over Carolina. He scores 106 for this week. So congratulations to Freebird. He's coming from the bottom here. He's trying to make his way up in the overall, and he's doing a good job. And we'll talk about that here in a second. So yes, congratulations, Freebird.
He took us all on a walk down Bad Street, USA.
That's right. So locks for the week where no one lost points. Okay, so this is just me looking at for the week. New Orleans, everybody took New Orleans over Atlanta. Everybody took New England over the Jets. Everyone took the Chargers over the Cards, and everyone took Indianapolis over Miami. And I'll tell you right now, I flipped that pick at least 5 times before I finally landed on Indianapolis, and I would have been the one.
Did not everyone take Chicago? Y'all gotta stop sleeping on the Bears, man.
Yeah, 2 people. The Bungles put 2 on Detroit, and Thug and Harmony took 4 on Detroit that week.
Oh, my.
Yeah. So, all right. And, there's only a couple games that could really be considered upsets. The aforementioned Seattle Seahawks defeat of Carolina.
Carolina was a minus 160 favorite.
Freebird and Big Ben were the only ones that took Seattle. And Buffalo handed the Jags a loss as only second place NFL Super Pro and last place Raider Nation put points on the Bills. So, yeah, interesting stats there for the week. Let's look at the overall. So right out of the gate, we have some movement in the standings. Raider Nation is the worst performer of the week. His last place effort for the week, for week 12, drops him 2 spots to 14th. Now this advances Teasley, Hobo Samurai, one spot to 13th by 5 points. Freebird, our winner, separates himself from the last 2 spots, now residing in 12th with a very impressive week 12 finish, and closes the gap on 11th to only 18 points. So speaking of 11th, White Dwayne Williams drops a spot and is now 7 points behind Sewin, who finally breaks into the top 10. 9th spot and staying steady is Thug and Harmony. 11 points ahead of Thug is Mamal Cat in 8th spot, and they're 13 points back from the spot above them. As the race for 4th was close last week, the gap has widened a little to 14 points total. between 7th to 4th. So, yes, folks, that's 7th, 6th, 5th, 4th, 4 spots, 14 points total between those spots. 7th place, Stizzy, 6th place, Wilvis, 5th place, the Bungles, and trying to hold them off and not doing too bad based on last week's results, 4th place, NFL Super Pro. Pat Mullin, top 3, the closest race I think we've had so far this year, dropping a spot to 3rd. Go luck yourself, find themselves scratching and fighting for a shot at the throne, as right now they are only 1 single point out of that top spot. Meanwhile, Totally 80s Pat capitalizes on a great week to jump up from 3rd, now tying Steel Curtain for 1st place. We have 5 weeks left, ladies and gentlemen. The buys are over. It's nothing but up to 16 points from here on out until the end of the season. And with the upsets that we've seen pretty commonplace each week, there's still some shakeups and plenty of position trades that can happen until it's all said and done. So, Pat, I know you kind of gave us a monologue there as we went into this. Anything else left to say on the overall and where you're sitting at?
While I am tied in points, and while I am tied for the best record, there are 2 separate people who tie me for each. Thus, I am in the lead.
Oh, man. So, let's talk about locks and let's talk about upsets. You ready?
I am ready, sir.
Okay, and we'll get on out of here. So, Pat Mullin, give us and the listeners your lock for Week 13.
Okay, I'm going to skip the obvious one, which would be the Kansas City Chiefs steamrolling my Oakland Raiders. And I'll give you what some might find surprising based on their recent efforts. I will take you as your lock of the week, the Green Bay Packers at home over the Arizona Cardinals.
I mean, Green Bay at home, my goodness. That coaching situation that they have there, it just seems like that's all I hear about anymore is the McCarthy era and how it needs to end. It's tough to have a team where you have a bunch of people who are upset with the coach, but they're hosting a very, very poor Arizona Cardinals team that's on the road. I think I would agree with you here. The Green Bay Packers should be able to at least make a statement and say, hey, look, we know we're fighting amongst ourselves. You know, the situation we've got going on is not good, but we're at home. We need to give the fans something to cheer about. And the Arizona Cardinals walking right in there is probably one of the best Christmas gifts they could probably get to just get the fan base back in somewhat of an order, I guess you'd say. So, all right, that's a good pick in my opinion. Let's talk about an upset, man. You got some, like I said, upsets are commonplace. You got anybody you think is going to upset a favorite here? So
I foreshadowed it a little bit earlier, but I do like this week, and they are an underdog at 3.5 points given away, plus 156 on the money line. The Los Angeles Chargers to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers at Heinz Field in Pittsburgh.
How much would you put on this game?
I like 8 to 9 points on this game.
All right, well, Pat, this has been fun, man. We went a little bit longer than I expected. I hope you don't mind that. Are you psyched for Week 13, man?
I'm extremely psyched. I think there's a lot of matchups on paper here that could go either way. This is going to be one of those weeks where we could easily see a big shakeup happen between 1 and 7 on these teams on our board. Yeah. Where 7 can vault real high, 1 can vault real low.
That's right. Let's get on out of here. For Pat Mullin, I'm Jesse Starcher. This has been the Pigskin Pick'em Roundup Rundown 2018, Week 13. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.